Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt something wasn't right, even when their words said otherwise? Have you ever caught the tension behind a smile, the shadow beneath a joke, the pause after a seemingly harmless question? As if something unspoken was hiding just below the surface, pulling at your instincts. What if those sensations weren't random? What if they were messages, subtle but structured, etched into the body, the voice, the silence? This isn't about psychic powers or manipulation. This is about decoding the language of the unconscious through the lens of one of depth psychology's most provocative pioneers, Carl Jung. These 18 insights aren't just theories. They're psychological truths rooted in how the psyche protects, defends, and reveals itself. And once you learn to read them in others, you'll inevitably start seeing them in yourself. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to Deep Psyche if you haven't already. Because here, we don't just explain human behavior, we explore it through the eyes of depth psychology, self-awareness, and emotional truth. Now, let's begin. 1. Every person wears a psychic mask. Jung called it the persona, the socially acceptable version of ourselves. But this mask isn't fake. It's functional. It helps us belong. But when people are tired or stressed, that mask begins to slip. The forced smile fades. The voice trembles. The eyes avoid. That's the soul asking to be seen. The cracks aren't weakness, they're invitations. 2. We judge in others what we suppress in ourselves. Projection is the ego's sleight of hand. When we can't accept something in ourselves, we throw it outward. That friend who shames others for attention-seeking might deeply fear being unseen. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Criticism, when observed mindfully, is a mirror. 3. Silence is a psychic event. The unconscious doesn't shout. It withdraws. A person who suddenly goes quiet may not be dishonest. They may be afraid. Silence isn't always avoidance. Sometimes, it's the only safe way to say, I'm not ready to share this part of myself. 4. Morality can be a performance. The person constantly declaring their ethics may be at war with hidden shame. Virtue signaling isn't always malicious, but it's rarely transparent. Real character doesn't announce itself. It acts quietly, especially when no one is watching. 5. Self-deception runs deeper than conscious lies. When someone says, I'm fine, too often, it isn't a lie to others. It's a mantra of survival. They've rehearsed it for years, hoping to convince not just the world, but themselves. People don't always lie to manipulate. Sometimes, they lie because the truth feels unbearable. 6. Arrogance masks inferiority. True confidence doesn't need volume. The person constantly asserting their worth is usually battling an invisible voice inside that whispers, you're not enough. The more they inflate the ego, the more the inner child is gasping for air. 7. Fear is the architect behind most behaviors. We aren't just reacting to the present, we're replaying the past. That partner who avoids hard conversations? Maybe they grew up around screaming. That employee who overworks? Maybe they were only praised when achieving. Trace the fear, not just the behavior. 8. Chronic criticism reveals a wounded shadow. The one who mocks others' emotions may have been punished for feeling as a child. The harshest critics are often wounded idealists, people who once believed in beauty and now feel betrayed by life. 9. Composure can be a guilt defense. People who seem flawlessly in control often carry the weight of invisible guilt. They over-prepare, micromanage, and never ask for help, not out of pride, but out of the fear that they're one mistake away from being unworthy. 10. Extremes often hide imbalance. Bold claims like, I never cry, or I don't care what others think, are usually defenses, not truths. Healthy people embrace nuance. They know that strength doesn't need to be absolute. It needs to be flexible. 11. The need for control often hides inner chaos. When someone clings tightly to routine, rules, or authority, it often reflects a childhood where unpredictability ruled. Control becomes a coping strategy, a way to quiet the storm inside. 12. Performing is often a cry for wholeness. That friend who always has it together, who's always upbeat, always entertaining. They might be terrified that if they ever stop performing, they'll vanish. Underneath the show is often a soul longing to be accepted without the costume. 13. Logic is often a mask for pain. Cold intellectualism is often used as armor. People who mock emotion or speak only in facts may have grown up where feeling was unsafe. Ask not just what they think, but what they once felt and weren't allowed to express. 14. Vulnerability is the ultimate strength. Power isn't the ability to dominate. It's the ability to stay present with pain. The person who holds space, who listens deeply, who doesn't flinch at tears, that is true strength. Jung taught that integration of shadow brings wholeness, and wholeness is power. 15. Attention-seeking often comes from neglect. The adult who constantly seeks praise was likely the child who felt invisible. The look at me behavior isn't vanity. It's the psyche saying, please don't forget I exist. Don't mock their need. Understand their history. 16. Envy speaks in quiet sabotage. We don't always hate what we despise. Sometimes we hate what reminds us of our unlived potential. The sarcastic comment, the mockery, the passive aggression, these are grief in disguise. 17. Childhood scripts often shape adult roles. That person who always gives, never receives? Maybe they had to earn love. That friend who avoids intimacy? Maybe it was never safe to attach. We repeat the past not because we want to, but because it's what we know. Healing begins by noticing the script. 18. Patterns are unconscious confessions. People don't always say what hurts, but they show it. Repeated ghosting, overworking, emotional shutdown, these aren't flaws. They're protective adaptations. Behind every repeated action is a need to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel like they matter. The deeper you look, the more patterns dissolve into pain, and pain into humanity. Reading others is not about control, it's about compassion. It's about seeing the child beneath the adult, the wound behind the wall, the truth beneath the mask. And when you begin to see people this way, you don't just gain insight. You begin to love without illusion. The final insight is the healing begins when we stop needing to be right. This final truth is rarely discussed, yet deeply transformative. Many arguments, power struggles, and emotional cold wars continue not because we disagree, but because we can't tolerate being seen as wrong. Jung wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." When you begin to soften your grip on needing to win, to be right, or to be praised, you make space for the soul to speak. And that is the birthplace of true connection. If this spoke to something inside you, drop a comment below. Which truth did you feel the most? Was it something you've noticed in others, or something you finally saw in yourself? Let's talk. And don't forget to subscribe to Deep Psyche, where the surface ends and the soul begins.